November 13, 1942. 0148 hours. Iron Bottom Sound, Guadalcanal. The beam of a searchlight cut through the humid night as Captain Tameichi Hara grasped the rail on the destroyer Amatsukaze's bridge, staring in horrified awe while American shells detonated around his vessel with the intensity of a steel and fire volcano. They are not targeting. They are merely saturating the air with metal. This sentiment, hastily recorded in his diary that evening, encapsulated a reality that had already dictated the Pacific War's fate before the majority of Japanese officers could comprehend it. Within the following 35 seconds, USS San Francisco would unleash a greater number of 5-inch shells than some Japanese destroyers were allotted for entire operations. The American crew was not tracking ammunition spent. They were building barriers of flames that transformed the darkness into fabricated daylight, their naval guns' barrels burning red from the relentless shooting. 2,700 meters away at Pearl Harbor, ammunition ships were in the midst of loading the next cargo, 15,000 tons of shells, ample to replenish the expended munitions of the American fleet from this engagement 50 times over. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, naval staff were figuring out whether they could allocate a mere 12 shells per gun for the forthcoming convoy sortie. The arithmetic of loss was being calculated in brass shell casings and gunpowder charges, present in production numbers that ridiculed every presumption the Imperial Navy had held regarding warfare against the United States. Captain Hara would live on to be the sole Japanese destroyer captain to see action from Pearl Harbor through to the surrender, bearing witness to a transformation that destroyed not only ships, but also overturned the entire perspective of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The resurgence had started 6 months prior, yet hardly anyone noticed it. On May 7, 1942, at the time of the Battle of the Coral Sea, Commander Teishi Nato, who served as the executive officer on the carrier Shukaku, saw something that left him extremely perplexed. For 4 consecutive hours, American cruisers and destroyers sustained relentless anti-aircraft fire without any noticeable pauses or apparent attempts to save ammunition. According to what he would later tell interrogators, each American destroyer appeared to possess a greater amount of anti-aircraft ammunition than the total supply allocated to their own entire destroyer division. Such a finding seemed utterly unlikely. Japanese tactical thinking, honed over many years, always maintained that all naval forces operated under the same ammunition limitations. The standard Japanese light anti-aircraft gun, Type 96 25mm, was governed by rigid firing instructions. Gunners were told to wait until hostile planes closed within 800 meters before opening fire. They were trained to unleash brief bursts of 3 to 5 rounds, then stop firing the moment a plane passed outside optimal range. This was not dictated by tactical best practices, but rather because available ammunition stocks would not permit any other method. Lieutenant Commander Masatake Okumiya, stationed on carrier Ryuho, had drilled his gun crews ceaselessly on these doctrines. Every sailor understood their ship's ammunition stores sufficed for just 12 minutes of consistent anti-aircraft fire. Once those minutes elapsed, they would have nothing left for defense. What troubled him, as he watched the Americans, was how they seemed able to maintain near constant firing for many hours. Yet the true consequences would not reveal themselves until the events at Guadalcanal, where the realities of industrial warfare would make themselves known in brutal terms of blood and metal strewn over the sea, later named Iron Bottom Sound by the Americans. February 27, 1942. The Battle of the Java Sea was expected to be an unqualified Japanese victory, and in tactical terms, it certainly was. Nevertheless, Captain Hara, leading the destroyer Amatsukaze, saw something during the clash that worried him more than any enemy shell. The joint American, British, Dutch, and Australian naval group led by Rear Admiral Carroll Dorman unleashed 1,619 rounds of 8-inch shells throughout the engagement, but only managed to get 5 hits, 4 of which turned out to be duds. By comparison, Japanese forces fired far fewer rounds, but managed to land decisive hits. However, Hara noticed a concerning detail in his after-action report. The Allied vessels did not cease firing at any point, seemed unconcerned about expending munitions, and kept up a rate of fire that would have depleted Japanese ammunition stores within the opening hour. They shot as if their supply of shells was inexhaustible, Hara stated in the memoir he released many years later. Their marksmanship was lacking, he noted, but their stockpile of ammunition was so great that volume took precedence over precision. The Japanese emerged fully victorious. 2 cruisers belonging to the Allies along with 3 destroyers were lost. Later, inside the wardroom, Hara caught wind of a troubling discussion. His gunnery officer, Lieutenant Yoshida, was adding up munitions consumption. "Captain, we have used 40% of our primary battery shells." Had fighting lasted another 2 hours, Hara cut him off with a glance, but the calculation was unmistakable. The Amatsukaze started out with 2,005-inch shells. In this one engagement, 800 were expended. The sunk Allied cruiser HMS Exat, based on accounts from rescued survivors, had unleashed more than 1,500 shells from its 8-inch guns alone, exceeding the full load of many Japanese heavy cruisers. August 7, 1942. When the Americans landed on Guadalcanal, the reaction of the Imperial Navy brought the shell shortage into clear focus. Vice Admiral Gonichi Mikawa's striking fleet racing south out of Rabaul carried ammunition sufficient for a single-night action, not by preference, but because Rabaul's magazines held nothing more. The engagement at Savo Island on August 9 seemed to affirm Japanese methods. Within 33 minutes, Mikawa's group destroyed 4 Allied heavy cruisers, resulting in 1,077 fatalities among their crews. The Japanese suffered no ship losses at all, yet beneath this display of tactical brilliance lay a looming strategic disaster. Commander Toshikazu Omi, who served as Mikawa's operations officer, would later confess this to American interrogators. "We withdrew immediately after the fight, not out of fear of aerial assault as you believed, but because the majority of our ammunition had been spent. We no longer had enough resources for another engagement." The American transports, which were unprotected and filled with supplies, escaped harm only because the Japanese forces quite literally could not afford to fire at them. Japanese units discharged a total of 471 shells, resulting in 10 successful hits, a hit percentage of 2.1% that would eventually be considered wasteful by authorities in Tokyo. Simultaneously, over at Pearl Harbor, Captain William Poco Smith was supervising the process of loading ammunition onto the USS Rainer. For this particular journey, her manifest included 5,000 tons of naval ammunition, comprising 350,000 rounds of 5-inch shells, 1.2 million rounds of 40 mm, and 3 million rounds of 20 mm. This amounted to a greater quantity of ammunition than what the entire Japanese combined fleet would utilize over the subsequent 3 months. The renowned Tokyo Express, known for its high-speed destroyer supply missions to resupply Guadalcanal, put the ammunition shortage into painfully clear perspective. On November 30, 1942, Rear Admiral Riso Tanaka led a group of 8 destroyers on yet another supply run. The cargo manifest exposed in seized papers detailed exactly what was sent: rice, 1,100 drums; medical supplies, 200 drums; ammunition, 280 drums. For 15,000 soldiers in dire need, there were only a little under 300 drums of ammunition. Each of these drums contained approximately 300 rifle cartridges or an equal weight of different types of ordnance. The whole Japanese contingent stationed on Guadalcanal was subsisting on ammunition deliveries that a single American destroyer could expend in just 20 minutes of fighting. Captain Hara, in command of the Amatsukaze during these missions, wrote angrily, "We endanger 8 destroyers, many lives, and loads of fuel in order to bring the Americans what they probably shoot off as practice targets." He turned out to be more correct than he realized.